begin a new series with you called Looking for a Leader. And over the next couple of months, we're going to be talking about spiritual leadership. And to do that, we're going to be looking at an Old Testament book, 1 Samuel. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, what in the world does 1 Samuel have to do with leadership? Well, it has a lot to do with the subject of being a spiritual leader. And to help you see that, I want to give you just a brief setup of the book. The events that take place in 1 Samuel took place around 1050 BC, about 3,000 years ago. And in the nation of Israel, it was a time of great upheaval. It seemed that at any point the whole nation would just veer over into anarchy. There were no kings, there were no prophets, there were no spiritual leaders to speak of. You can find this account in the book of Judges. And if ever you want to get some depressing reading just to pull you down during the day, go to the book of Judges and read that for a while. But Judges chronologically happens right before 1 Samuel. And to kind of help you see where Israel was when the events of 1 Samuel take place, I want to read the very last verse of Judges chapter 21, verse 25. It says this: "In those days there was no king, there was no leader in Israel. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes." And so there was no leader to speak of. Those that tried to be leaders were not good spiritual leaders. They did not love the Lord, were serving their own ends, and the peoples suffered as a result of it, and no one knew what was right or wrong. 1 Samuel is the story of God doing something about that situation. And in the book of 1 Samuel, we find the stories of three of Israel's great leaders. First is Samuel, second is King Saul, and then there's the story of King David. All of these three leaders we're going to be looking at in this series together. And I think it's an important series because I think it mirrors the condition that you and I live in today. There is a crisis of good leaders, good, strong, spiritual, reliable, faithful leaders. You can look at government, even though not many of our elected officials are Christians. We would like for them to be men of character and integrity. But when you ask people, do you believe in your government leaders? Do you trust them? Polls are at an all-time low. We would like to see spiritual leadership in our professional sports. But there was a story this week about a guy who was in trouble in the locker room doing some things that he shouldn't have. And so where are our leaders in professional sports, our role models? How about business? When are we going to hear the next story about a CEO doing something that he should not do? Today we are in a crisis of leadership, and like ancient Israel, people don't know what's right or wrong. Everyone is doing what is right in their own eyes. And so this is a very important series for our church and for the country. And to kind of set the series up, I want to talk about how this first great leader, Samuel, was born. And he was born at a very difficult time, a very hard time. It was if you want to say, barren time. It was a dry time for the nation of Israel. They weren't fruitful. They weren't being the people that God wanted them to be. Originally, God said to Abraham, your people are going to be a blessing, but they were everything but a blessing at this point in time. And like Israel was barren, there was a lady in 1 Samuel 1 who was also barren. And she was Samuel's mom. She couldn't have a child. And so I want to ask you today, are you barren? Not in the literal sense, but I think we all could say here today there are seasons in our life when we're dry, we're barren, we're unfruitful, we're unproductive, we're unfulfilled, and we try hard, we pray hard, we wait, we push against that wall and it doesn't seem to budge, and we are just barren. And it's difficult. We feel as though we are failures. And so today I hope that we can find some guidance. The title of my message today is Prevailing Through the Barren Times. I first want you to see that sometimes God allows for seasons of barrenness. God allows for it. Notice with me here in 1 Samuel chapter 1, verses 1 through 2, there was a certain man of Ramathaim Zophim, I thought Manasseh was bad, but that's a tough one. That's a tongue twister right there. Of the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, the son of Jehoram. I think I said that right. And son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Zuph, an Ephrathite. He had 2 wives. The name of one was Hannah. The name of the other was Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Here we find the introduction to Samuel's father. And you just need to know this about this city, Ramathaim Zophim. It was a small city. It was like Nokesville. It was up in the hills of Ephraim somewhere. And we find a list of some of his father's relatives. And these guys are basically nobodies. They're insignificant. We know nothing about them. And so this is a very common family. And we find something about Elkanah's domestic situation. He had 2 wives, which was common and even acceptable in the Old Testament, though it was not God's choice from the very beginning. But he had 2 wives, and the name of one was Peninnah, and the name of the other was Hannah. And it seems that Elkanah first married Hannah, and they experienced great disappointment because she was barren. She was unfruitful. Now you need to know about barrenness in this time. It was seen as a tremendous failure. In this culture and at this time, it was the woman's highest purpose to bear a child and to rear a family. That's what it was all about. And so in Hannah's eyes and in the eyes of everyone else, she was a failure. But Peninnah, she had lots of kids. And we find that this brings about difficulty. Notice here in verse 3 through 7. Now this man used to go up year by year from his city to worship, to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts at Shiloh, where the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, we'll learn more about these guys next week. They were priests of the Lord. And on the day when Elkanah sacrificed, he would give portions to Peninnah, his wife, and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave a double portion because he loved her, though the Lord had closed her womb. He wanted to compensate for her barrenness, wanted to make her feel loved. Oh, Hannah, I know you don't have any children, but I want you to know how much I love you. Here is a double portion. And we read here that the Lord had closed her womb. In verse 6 we continue to read, and her rival, which is Peninnah, used to provoke her grievously to irritate her. These words again, because the Lord had closed her womb. And so it went by year, as often as they went up to the house of the Lord, she used to provoke her. Therefore Hannah wept and would not eat. Twice we read in these verses, for the Lord had closed her womb. And this tells us something about the barren times in our life. God is a sovereign God. The events in your life, the things that you go through, the details in your life, God's hand is behind those things, whether they be to us good or bad or difficult. He is in control. And that does not mean that we just have to sit there and take it lying down and doing nothing about it and just say, oh, I guess this is my condition in life. I'm just supposed to be unfruitful and dry and barren and unproductive. No, that's not what we're to do, but we should recognize humbly that in the difficult seasons of our lives, God, the sovereign God, is behind the circumstances we find ourselves in.